So I think we all, as owners of the road, and I think the reality is we all share the road, we as drivers, as motorists, and as riders needing to stay left, as far left as possible, need to understand that we need to share the road. So for me, it's really quite simple. Don't put the rider at risk. You know, sometimes the riders ride like clowns, to be quite frank, but you know, they are unprotected, and we as motorists need to ensure we don't do something stupid and don't knock them over. So I don't feel safe, but there are times where I do. You know, it's a strange thing, and I think the reality is we as riders are probably guilty at times of taking too much road, and we as motorists are at times intolerant of the cyclists. And I think that's what creates the feeling of unsafety or not feeling safe. And I think it's really quite simple. If we keep the space, we'll make everyone safe. So the surprising thing is there are a lot of motorists who are very tolerant of cyclists, who are understanding and who keep the space and who are polite and friendly. There are some motorists who are completely intolerant and who would probably love to knock a cyclist over, to be quite frank. And those are motorists who, you know, to be fair, there's no place in society for them really. In the same breath, the cyclists have a responsibility to ride safely. And what is safe? What is safely? And I think that is probably the crux. Is it single file or is it two abreast and narrow? It's a difficult situation, but the reality is cyclists at times are also selfish buggers who don't ride with respect for the motorists. I think everyone has a right to use the road, and I think if you go into the rest of the world, cyclists are a big form of commuting, and we would love to see that grow in this country, which means there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that cyclists have a place on the road and should be tolerated more so. So 1 meter, if you consider how narrow 1 meter is, it's probably not safe enough. But the reality is our roads probably don't have more space to make it 1.5 meters. And understanding that a cyclist is on two narrow wheels most of the time, and if you move a fraction, you know, on your bike, you're probably moving a fair portion of that 1 meter in your little step and climb or whatever it is. So 1 meter is probably not a lot, but 1 meter I think is a lot better than what we have at the moment. So for me it's quite simple. The motorists that are intolerant of cyclists should consider the fact that maybe one day they'll be commuting on a bicycle, and how would they then want to be treated by motorists who are then overtaking them, passing them, or coming past them head on the wrong side of the road. So put yourself in the other person's shoes is probably the best advice I can give. Every cyclist drives at some point and finds themselves in that position. So in the same breath, be more tolerant and more forgiving of the motorists. I absolutely do believe that government should be more involved in cycling. I think to promote cycling as a form of commuting, we should be thinking about cycling lanes. We should be thinking about taxi lanes so that the taxis are not in the cycling lanes, and undoubtedly understanding the fuel price and inflation and the cost of living. I think there'll be more and more people who would love to commute, but it's not safe to commute at present, and government can certainly aid in that goal. Well, I think the safe cycling is two things. One, from you know, maybe there is an all-inclusive way of getting government involved in creating cycle lanes. So I think we should engage with government. I think cycling lanes are appropriate. I think part of that would need to be, as I said, taxi lanes as well, because the reality is the taxis will probably end up in the cycle lanes. If you go into the cradle and you see how effective it is out there with the dedicated cycle lane, you'll see the effect that it does have. And so I would guess government is the one thing, but most importantly, it's an educational process. It's about educating the motorists and re-educating the cyclists. So having lived in Europe, I can tell you that in Europe, the cyclist is king. If you knock a cyclist over, irrespective of what happened, it is you as the motorist's fault. So it's an attitude, and again, I suppose it's re-educating the mindset. I don't think we'll ever get to that in this country, but there's no doubt we have to be more tolerant. I cycle because for a number of reasons. One is I love being out on the bike. I do it because I absolutely thoroughly enjoy it. It's my little form of escapism where I go to another place and I have time to think and enjoy the outdoors, and I've become more of a mountain biker, probably because we get into areas that you would never normally go to, and obviously just to stay fit and healthy. And I'd love to say I commute, but I'm not sure it's safe enough to commute yet. Maybe one day I will.